This happened in the 70s when I was about 10. As a child growing up in Surrey, I often played alone in the woods near my home. I knew those woods very well, but on this particular afternoon, I wandered into a part of the woods I had never seen before. Suddenly, everything felt unfamiliar, as if I'd crossed into a different place without realizing it. I wandered around for a bit, trying to regain my bearings when I noticed up ahead, between the trees, a kind of gathering or celebration. I headed toward the gathering, thinking they could help me find my way back home. But when I got closer, I realized I wasn't looking at a normal group of human beings. I was standing at the outskirts of what I can only describe as a musical party. I remember food and drink laid out, though it didn't seem to rest on the ground or on tables. It was simply there, arranged in a way I couldn't quite make sense of. I heard pipes, drums, and stringed instruments, lively, layered, and unlike anything I'd heard before. The sounds seemed to come from everywhere at once, weaving through the trees. The figures themselves were incredibly varied. Some looked like ordinary people. Some appeared to be children, others elderly. A few were humanoid but animal-like, and others were beings I still can't properly describe, forms that didn't fit into anything I'd known then or since. I just stood there completely transfixed, watching and listening. I don't remember feeling afraid. I actually felt absorbed, as though I was watching a film or a play. I thought I was there for only a few minutes, just standing and watching. When I finally turned around and ran home, which I found out was only a short distance away, I realized much more time had passed, at least an hour. I told my mother what I'd seen as soon as I got back. She listened and accepted that I'd experienced something. She never told me it was imaginary, but she never said it was real either. Later, I tried to return to that spot in the woods, but I never found it again. The paths only led to familiar places, and no matter how hard I searched, that clearing was gone. At the time, the area had no reputation that I knew of or know of for fairies or strange sightings, and I hadn't heard any stories like that before. So I definitely didn't imagine it because I hadn't heard stories like that or anything of that nature. Looking back now, I have no doubt of what I saw. It was definitely Fae. I tend to wonder what their opinion is of us, but without finding that clearing in the woods again, there's no way for me to ask. Just a brief interruption to encourage you to check out my novel, The Ghosts of Nothing. It's a fantasy adventure. It's about fairies, of course, based on all my research on fairy mythology and fairy folklore. It's spooky, it's creepy, and it's magical, a lot like this channel. So if you like the channel, I think you'll enjoy it. You can check it out. It's on Amazon and Audible. Now, back to the stories. This didn't happen to me. It happened to a friend of my family's back in the 1940s. I'll call him Rob. Rob was 21 years old and training as a pilot and navigator with the RAF in Canada during the war. He was stationed at an RAF training base in Manitoba. On the night of December 10th, not sure what year exactly, Rob was flying solo in an Arvo Anson, a twin-engine aircraft used for training. He had already been in the air for nearly 3 hours, completing a routine navigation exercise with turns at various control points, when he noticed something odd. On either side of the nose of the aircraft, just ahead of the cockpit, were two small bumps. He was certain they hadn't been there before. At first, he assumed they must be some kind of exhaust outlet or fitting he hadn't noticed previously, and he made a mental note to check them once he landed. Then the bumps started moving. As Rob watched, they shifted and suddenly looked unmistakably like hands. Before he could fully process what he was seeing, a small figure pulled itself up over the nose of the aircraft and stood upright in the open air, directly in front of him. The creature looked like something out of folklore, a pixie or elf, about 18 inches tall. It appeared completely unaffected by the speed of the plane or the freezing wind. It just stood there calmly, as if on solid ground. The little figure moved closer, coming to within a foot of the windscreen. Rob could see it clearly now. It was dressed entirely in green, a tunic and trousers, and wore pointed shoes made of something like velvet, with the toes curled upwards. His clothes didn't flap or move at all in the rushing air. Panicking, Rob shouted and waved his arms, trying desperately to get its attention, but with the roar of the engines, shouting was useless. He had the strong impression that the creature couldn't see him, or perhaps wasn't aware of him at all. He noticed the pixie's face was kind and gentle. It had a short, neatly trimmed beard, and the face itself looked older, like that of an elderly man rather than a child. After about 30 seconds, the figure sat down casually on the nose of the plane, looked down past the wing, then placed its hands behind itself and slid smoothly off the side of the aircraft, disappearing from view. That was the end of the encounter. When Rob landed, he told the story to the other airmen. As you might expect, he was met with laughter and no small amount of ribbing in the mess. But the following day, a senior officer visited Rob privately in his barracks and reassured him, telling Rob that others stationed at the base had seen similar things and that he shouldn't worry about what had happened. Years later, in a much later account of the incident, Rob slightly changed how he described the appearance of the creature, saying that it simply appeared outside the aircraft without mentioning it pulling itself up over the nose. But he never denied the encounter itself. Some have suggested Rob entered a dreamlike or altered state during the flight. Rob absolutely rejected that idea. He maintained until the end of his life that he was fully awake and that something very real had been standing on the nose of his plane that night over the frozen plains of Manitoba. I'm the daughter of Polish immigrants to England, and ever since I was a baby, my parents have brought me back to Poland once or twice a year to visit family. We travel around the country, seeing the places they grew up and the landscapes tied to Poland's long and often troubled history. I've always felt deeply connected to it, and I still feel an almost physical pull to return whenever I'm away for too long. This happened in the Karkonosze Mountains in southwest Poland, near the Czech border, an ancient volcanic range also known as the Giant Mountains. The area is rich in old Slavic folklore, and one of the most well-known figures is the Dochgor, the lord or ghost of the mountains. For centuries, he was believed to be a force of nature responsible for weather, luck, and protection of the land. Over time, as Christianity blended with local beliefs, he became more humanized in legend. Sometimes he's depicted as a monstrous antlered figure on old maps. Other times as a cloaked old man with a staff, a guardian watching over the valleys. I grew up hearing about him. My parents would tease my siblings and me, saying he was always watching from the mountains. In 2016, when I was 10 years old, my parents had just bought a new apartment in a valley between the mountains. I couldn't sleep one night, so sometime after 3 a.m., I quietly picked up my blanket and went downstairs to lie on the red sofa in the open-plan living room. As I was pulling the cushions aside, I happened to glance toward the dining table, and something was there. Standing in the space between the table and the wall was a figure. It was translucent, kind of spectral, and outlined with a glowing electric blue light that seemed to move like energy. The glow traced the shape of a long cloak draped over its shoulders. In its left hand, it held what looked like a staff. The figure appeared hooded, the top sloping into a triangular shape, and from the hood rose two antlers, glowing even more intensely than the rest of it. As a child raised Catholic, the only horned being I knew of was the devil, and the sight sent a shock of fear through me. At the same time, a part of me knew it wasn't that. The figure felt calm and regal, powerful and masculine. It looked as tall as my father, though it didn't seem fully grounded, almost as if it were hovering. It had no face, no eyes, no visible features beyond its silhouette, but I felt its presence focused directly on me. Everything was completely still. The sound of cars on the road outside had vanished, and the air felt thick and charged like electricity. I was terrified, but I didn't feel threatened. The presence felt protective in a way, like a guardian rather than something malevolent. I remember thinking about the phone on the kitchen counter and briefly wondering if I should take a photo, but I knew instinctively it wouldn't capture what I was seeing. I also felt like I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. When I tried to open my mouth, no sound came out. Eventually, overwhelmed, I pulled my blanket over my head. My heart was pounding, and I just lay there in shock, certain I had just seen something real. I felt like I stayed there for maybe half an hour or 40 minutes at the most. But when I finally peeked out again, it was morning. The figure was gone. The sounds outside returned, and when I checked the oven clock, it was around 8 a.m. I was very confused because I couldn't understand how so much time had passed. I assumed it was just stress or adrenaline. But strangely, that morning, I felt joyful. I felt that I had seen the Lord of the Mountains, and I started to feel blessed by the encounter looking back on it. Later that day, I told my parents what had happened. My father didn't think much of it, but my mother was intrigued. That same day, she took me to a small local museum nearby that focused on the history and folklore of the mountains. Hanging outside the entrance was a large iron silhouette of the Lord of the Mountains, antlers, staff, cloak, and all. Inside, I saw the different depictions of him, sometimes monstrous and devilish, other times as an old cloaked man with a long beard, deeply tied to the land. My mother bought me a small metal pin of the figure, which I still associate with that night. At the time, I was a very anxious child, deeply concerned with being good. I felt constant pressure to atone for imagined wrongs and tried to help excessively around the house. Looking back, I feel strongly that the reason the being appeared to me was to comfort me, to let me know I was good enough, that everything would be okay. For years, I thought of him as a ghost, the ghost of the mountains. That never quite fit. This presence felt ancient, not human. Now I think of him as something from another realm, a watcher tied to the land itself, much like the old legends describe. I'm an adult now, and my family has returned to those mountains every year since. I know the trails, the forests, the snow-covered peaks. I've grown up there in a way, and every time I'm back, especially at night, I catch myself looking towards the same spot in the room, quietly hoping I might see him again, but I never have. I like to believe he's still there, resting between the mountains, watching over the ancient landscape. I know for the rest of my life, something will always draw me back to those magical mountains. This happened in Lancashire in December of 2020. I was in my 60s at the time, and I've always considered myself a skeptic. For several weeks, the security lights in my back garden had been switching on and off for no apparent reason. We have cameras and an app on our phones that alert us if someone is on the property, and the notifications kept going off, even though there was never anyone there. It was irritating more than anything. One evening, around 7:15, I was watching television when the lights started flashing again. It was cold, dark, and already fully night outside. Eventually, I'd had enough, so I went into the back garden to see what was setting them off. Out there, I saw a small, bright light moving in the darkness. It reminded me of a firefly, but we don't get fireflies here. At the same time, my phone kept chiming as if something was moving continuously in the garden. So I went inside and checked the CCTV playback. On screen, I could see the light moving extremely fast, darting around the garden and then repeatedly heading towards the roof, where the cameras are mounted, almost as if it was trying to get into the window. Watching it back, it became disturbingly clear that the light had a shape. To my disbelief, it looked like a fairy. Even then, I kept trying to find a rational explanation. It had to be some kind of reflection, an insect, anything ordinary. I went back into the garden and started taking photos, trying to catch a clear image. After several attempts, I managed to capture what I can only describe as a very realistic picture of a fairy. She looked exactly like something out of a book, even her wings, which reminded me of a hummingbird's. Since then, I've seen the light many more times. The security lights still switch on and off, sometimes during the day, sometimes at night, and my phone continues to alert me that something's there. The photos I have are unbelievable, and even now, I don't know if I truly believe what I'm seeing there. But I do know this. I have footage and I have photographs, and something is triggering my cameras. I live in a completely ordinary house with no nearby trees or water, and I have no explanation for what's happening in my garden. I'm not saying I know fairies exist for sure or I know what they are. They've always been mythical creatures to me. But there's something in my garden, and I caught it on film. This happened in Washington State in December of 2012. I'd gone with my husband to an island nature reserve. It was a clear day. We had decided to take a different path than our normal route as we would go there often. I remember walking past this area that was quite dense with foliage, but in the near distance was a tree stump covered in moths and other plants. I remember having a strange feeling that something was watching me. I got my camera out and took a photo. I didn't zoom in or anything, just a simple point-and-shoot photo of the area. I really didn't expect to find anything on the photo, but the feeling was very real. I got home and uploaded the photo to my computer to take a closer look, and wow, I even get goosebumps now remembering what I saw. It was a face looking back at me, but a masked face, like a fairy wearing a mask that was almost cat-like, but all green. Maybe a green man face mask? I couldn't believe it. I've been back to the same nature reserve many times since then, but for some reason I can't find the area I took the photo in, which has just added to the mystery. I do feel it wanted me to see it, or take a photo, and then find it within the photo. It was an experience that actually led me to research fairy folklore much more closely, and then find a connection with alien experiences. It changed my whole UFO alien research, for the better, and it opened my mind to a much deeper way of thinking about these strange phenomena. I think fairies are another race of beings that we are yet to understand fully. My main area of research is about UFOs and aliens, also Bigfoot, but this was not like any of those experiences. I've always been interested in fairy folklore, but this connection that some have put together between fairies and aliens, like Jacques Vallée, to name one of them, is a new area for me. The only other time I can say I might have seen a fairy was when I was very little, in my bedroom. I remember seeing this tiny man in a red and white striped jumper and blue trousers, dancing around and playing a flute. It was the month of December. My boyfriend at the time was sleeping over at my house. It was late at night and we had just had a bad fight. I decided to leave my room to lay down on the couch next to my Christmas tree. Seeing the Christmas tree lit up at night has always given me peace ever since I was a little girl. I was staring at it out of nostalgia, half asleep, half awake, also feeling very sad about the argument. And then I started to see something. A bright being formed in front of the Christmas tree. I felt a bit startled at this, and yet the being felt familiar somehow, like a guardian fae I can only faintly remember from my childhood. I didn't move. It was like I was in a trance. Then the being leaned over and hugged me. It hugged my whole body. I never believed in chakras before, but it felt like this being was energizing me, all of my chakras, from my heart to my head to my feet. I could see bright colors coming out of my body. It was so beautiful. I had never had an experience so vivid and bright before. Then I forced myself to snap out of whatever trance I was in, and the being was gone. Yet I felt strongly that this visitor was still in my house, so I ran back into the room with my then boyfriend. But once there, I was hesitant to tell him what happened, thinking he would assume it was just a dream. He got up and went to get some water, but when he came back into the room, he said, "There's something in your kitchen." He showed me the hair on his arm, which was standing on end like from extreme static. He described a being, something very bright and powerful. We went back to check together in the kitchen, but nothing was there. I told him I couldn't explain it. I didn't tell him what I had just experienced by the Christmas tree because I didn't want to offend the being that embraced me. That night, my boyfriend and I broke up. I never believed in things like guardian angels or fairies. I wanted to, but just never could. And yet, I feel I have always had a presence around me ever since I was little. A kind of guardian fairy, if there is such a thing. Sometimes, when I'm in a happy state, I think I can feel this being around me, as when I'm cooking. It helps me keep things spotless in the kitchen, adding an extra sparkle to my time there. What did the fairy look like? I couldn't see it clearly. I could feel its presence, a bright, large being, very powerful. As for what I think fairies are, I think they're nature spirits that are attracted to innocence like that of children and people who are childlike and imaginative. Thanks for watching and Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you had a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Thank you to everyone who submitted their stories for this one. Let me know your thoughts on these down in the comments and your theories about what these people might have seen, what they might have experienced, and what you think fairies are. Speaking of spooky fairy stories, as usual, I really hope you'll check out my fairy fantasy novel, The Ghost of Nothing, if you haven't already. It's a supernatural tale about a girl from a haunted town that turns out to have more of a fairy problem than a ghost problem. The fairy world of the novel is based on my research into fairy lore, so I think if you enjoy the stories I share here, you should definitely check it out. You will probably enjoy it. It's also available as an audiobook on Audible if you prefer to listen rather than read, and I'm very close to finishing book 2, so hopefully I'll be able to put that out sometime next year. For a chance to win a free copy of the audiobook, subscribe to my newsletter, Fairy Lights. Every month I randomly select a subscriber for a free giveaway, and it's completely free to join. You'll find the sign-up link on my website and in the description. If you have a story of your own to share, I'd love to hear it. You can submit your fairy experiences through the form on my website, where you'll also find the mailing list to sign up. A huge thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, as well as everyone who joined the channel, made a one-time donation through PayPal or Coffee, or subscribed to my newsletter, the paid version of that. Your support keeps this work going, and I appreciate you all so much. If you'd like to support the channel, all the support options are in the description below. If you like this video, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe if you're new, and hype the video. That's a new thing that YouTube has as well. That really helps the channel grow. And please take a second to hit the bell, because YouTube has gotten really bad at notifications when you haven't hit the bell. So it's important actually to hit the bell, not just subscribe. And until next time, this has been a visit from your scary fairy godmother.